This is Oliver Graham, and you're listening to The Ascent with Crestmont Private Wealth.
The opinions expressed are those of the host. The material is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute investment advice, and it is not intended as an endorsement for any specific investment. Visit crestmontpw.com for more details.
Welcome to The Ascent. This is Sam McGee with Crestmont Private Wealth. We have offices in Houston, Texas at One Riverway, and Boerne, Texas, just outside of San Antonio at 604 South Main. Today we have a very special guest on the line, calling in from Houston, former Texas A&M quarterback, Kellen Mond. Welcome to the show, Kellen.
I appreciate you for having me.
So I say former quarterback because you've really had a neat career reinvention and pivot that we really want to spend some time talking about today. But before we do that, I really think the proper introduction is, for those Aggies out there that are listening to this, we are talking with the all-time passing leader at Texas A&M and a really fine example of an Aggie, great leader, and you were there all 4 years, isn't that right?
Yep, all 4, 2017 through 2020.
Excellent. So we're not going to talk Aggie football today, as much as that pains me to say. We're going to talk about career and your journey and what you're doing today. And I think, there's people out there listening to this right now that are thinking about making a career jump, or maybe they're an athlete and they're done with their playing time, or maybe, they're an engineer and they really want to be doing something else. And so this show, if you're listening, this is for you. Kellen, please share some of your story and your background, up to present, if you would.
Yeah, so, obviously I played football at Texas A&M, ended in 2020, and was on 4 different teams while being in the NFL. But I moved into a space that most NFL players, and it's sort of the total opposite end of football, but into art and photography. And it was something that I picked up when I was a rookie in the NFL, as I simply just picked up a camera. But, at the time there was never any sort of plans of ever being a artist, selling artwork, or it was simply the peaceful hobby that, was able to balance out the chaotic world of being an NFL quarterback. And so, I was able, sort of luckily to run into something that I loved. I was already doing it for free as I travel all across different countries around the world with my camera. So now creating a business out of it, and then you sort of still in the earlier stages, going through some of the hurdles, trying to figure out what's a way to be different in really a extremely traditional industry, being the fine art industry. So you sort of take everything that you learn from one industry, being, the football side, which I guess I've been playing for over 2 decades, or at least been throwing a football for over 2 decades, and then see how there's carryover. And when it comes to your story, being able to tell your story on the other side, which is one of the main and most important things in the fine art space.
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at your Instagram page, 54,000 followers. That's pretty impressive. You have a quote on here that says, "Capturing the beauty in imperfection and chaos." What does that mean to you?
So it's actually sort of a deep meaning. I think it actually ties into my sort of the football relationship that I had while I was playing in the NFL. And I was sort of that person because my whole entire life throughout middle school, high school, even college, and playing, pretty much 3.5, almost 4 years at A&M, you're the starter and you're the guy you're the entire time. And so whenever you reach the NFL and you're still being paid a lot of money, but your career isn't necessarily going in the direction that you want, because everyone wants to play, and rightfully so. And so I think part of it was me at the time while playing in the NFL, no matter how great certain things were, me not appreciating the beauty in my life, no matter what the imperfection and chaos was. And I think part of my, sort of theme when it comes to the style of work that I have when it comes to photography and art is capturing that beauty and imperfection and chaos. So I think it was some sort of lesson I was almost sort of forced or sort of divine to do was, if I'm not going to appreciate the beauty and imperfection in my life on the football side, I'm going to be forced to capture it on the photography side.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. And so, I think about passion and purpose, and that we talk a lot about that on this show, and finding deeper meaning in your work, because there's vocations and then there's passions, and you're pursuing that. Are you surprised? Have you surprised yourself that this is what you're doing now? Do you stop and look back and go, wow, this is kind of a neat path?
Yeah, it definitely is. I think, a lot of it still is a bit of the same. I think the one thing that I'm sort of surprising myself with is a lot of the work that I'm actually doing. Obviously, you sort of network and meet a lot of people in a bunch of different industries, but a lot of the work that I'm doing, even with Texas A&M, is through the fine arts department. A lot of stuff with the Texas A&M Foundation.
Wow.
And, trying to see, how can we make a fine art program that's one of the most elite in the country, the same way all the other colleges and all the other schools are at Texas A&M. And so, but if you would have told me, even 3 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago, that I would be an artist and I would be spending more time doing stuff on the business or art side rather than something on the football field or spring games or visits, I would, I think I'd say you're crazy. And so, but it's been fun. And so, being able to find, like you said, that purpose and passion with something that you love doing, and just, finding a way to create a business out of it. Not only, you sort of maintain that fun and passionate lifestyle, but also you're able to be creative and find a way that, you can probably make money off of maybe doing anything in the world.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you follow the passion, the money comes, and I firmly believe that. Kellen, I did not know that you were having a vision to help A&M and give back, to develop, more of a presence with fine art with A&M. I think that's fantastic. And
yeah,
just knowing you in the brief time that I've known you, it seems like, yeah, you've got this entrepreneurial spirit, but also, you care a lot about the university. You want to give back your time. You want to create a legacy and improve things. Does that come from being a quarterback, you think? I mean, are there pieces of you that, did that make you a quarterback, or is it rather, I learned that as a quarterback? Was it innate?
I think a bit of it is that quarterback within you. A bit of it is sort of that personality and how you grew up and you sort of value relationships. I also think that there's a certain spirit around Texas A&M that almost wants and sort of feeds into that mindset of just wanting to help and, elevate people around you and, Aggies and other people who are involved in the Texas A&M circles. A lot of the stuff that I'm doing was more still early stages, trying to figure out, how can you make a fine art programs one of the elite in the country, because we have our performance visualization and fine arts program. And when it comes to any of the visualization or anything within that school, we're one of the top in the country. We send students and some of our graduates to Walt Disney, Pixar, all biggest companies. But when it comes to the fine art space, we don't have like a bachelor's or master's. So a lot of it is sort of doing research on what makes a fine art department great. But then whenever people leave with a fine arts degree from Texas A&M, the goal is hopefully that it holds weight. It may not be a New York School of Art and, maybe not a Yale School of Art, but it still holds a good enough weight where maybe you can get into certain businesses within the fine art space, within the auction world, and sort of make a career out of it.
So, yeah, let's pivot to the business side. And you're listening to The Ascent with Crestmont Private Wealth. We have Kellen Mond, former quarterback, now a artist who's making his way into the fine art of photography and cityscapes. Really, really neat. We'll have a way that you can follow him here at the end. So we're going to pivot to the business side. Now, from a wealth management perspective, there is no doubt that there is a massive amount of interest, collectability, value in fine art, undeniable. And that's a part of wealth management. When you get into the, call it 10 million and up type of portfolio client, and then the 100 million and up type of client, art is an asset. it is an absolute asset. And so when you think about some of the things you've been to, and Kellen, you've shared, with me some of the fine art related gatherings that happen in Miami and Austin, but I don't think the general public knows about all these things, right? I mean, so share what that's like. I mean, just kind of be the eyes, ears, and feet right now and share for the listeners, what's that all about?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think one of the things, and it's sort of, I guess it's a good thing and a bad thing when it comes to the art space, because work can be priced in the millions, work can be priced in the hundreds, and a lot of it is simply just based on where you want to price your work. Obviously, if you're in the millions, maybe you passed away or you've done some extensive work and you sold to corporations, you've been in institutions, museum shows, galleries. That's sort of, maybe when you're maybe 2 decades down the line. But like you said, most people who are in that upper echelon, ultra high net worth are some ways all involved into art. And it's one of those sort of shadow well sort of private deals that it's not something that you wear on your wrist to show off. It's not a car that you pull up to an event to show off, but it is about sort of legacy. And, these works get passed down through generations and added to family collections, decades down the line. And so, I think the great thing that I found about the art space is the amount of relationships that you build, because it doesn't matter what industry you're in, you can collect art. And, I definitely see more of a trend as it, I think it'll stay traditional and extremely private when it comes to the art world, but maybe broadening a little bit out so, more people know that this is accessible and that this is actually a thing. And that's sort of my goal within the space, as I have a large following, a large influence as one of the maybe most unique story in the history of art as an NFL quarterback moving over into the fine art space, and sort of saying like, hey, this is a space that you can get into and it doesn't matter what price point you want to start at. I think it is a very unique and fascinating place. And, as yourself, as a, wealth advisor, it's something that you are very aware of and, probably have clients who are collecting works as many other advisors.
Yeah. So we are getting pretty close to the end of the show. And I think this will be a heavily watched episode here in Bernie and beyond on our podcast. We're talking with Kellen Mond, former quarterback of Texas A&M, an NFL quarterback who has reinvented his career into passion and purpose through fine art and photography. Really, really neat. I want to close on something, Kellen, because I think there's people out there listening right now going, gosh, I had no idea that he's doing that. And I want to reflect back on something that I remember about you at A&M. I actually went to one of the first games you played in at the Rose Bowl against UCLA. We won't talk about the result, but tough game. You stepped right into it. And then the last game I actually watched you play, I actually didn't watch any of your NFL games, to be honest, even though I know you did well, was the Orange Bowl. A tremendous game. And, I think about that, where you start is not where you finish, and you never really arrive, right? So the thing I've absolutely loved about following you, getting to know you, is it really came through your LinkedIn page. And some of the thoughts that you share about reinvention and your purpose and your passion, it's very vulnerable and very authentic. And I think that also makes you very unique. So how would someone find you if they wanted to follow your art, follow your story? How would they do that?
They can follow me on Instagram, just at Kellen Mond, or, on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find, just Kellen Mond. I sort of use both of those platforms, just naturally they're two different platforms. So a lot of the more writing will be on LinkedIn, where a lot more of simply just maybe day to day sort of keep you updated is mainly through Instagram. But, I'm always happy to chat with anyone, always talk art, whether you want to purchase art or simply just want to talk art. The fun thing that I've been able to love, because like I said, it's something that anybody in every industry, and I think companies will start collecting art, and you start to see sort of that value, because art can be placed anywhere. It can be placed in an office space and in a hotel lobby, and it could be placed anywhere. And I think people are going to start seeing more of that rise when it seems, one, a little bit more accessible, but also there's sort of that curiosity gap that is filled, and me knowing that, hey, this is something that I can get into. It's not something that takes me away from my job, but these are some, really high-end, private, a lot of times invite-only events that are, really tailored for a specific type of people. And it's honestly just an amazing industry, and I'm glad I'm able to be a part of it.
Well, I'm really glad that you made the time to share your story. I know you have a hard stop here in a few minutes, and I would just want to close in this comment, back to this, UCLA Rose Bowl game, and then all the way to the Orange Bowl as sort of an example of what it's like to grow in your career, whether it's football or art or anything else. And somebody's listening to this right now who might have been laid off, or who sold their business and is trying to refine their identity, or someone that is unsure of the path they're on. I mean, you're a living, breathing example of success in pursuing passion and purpose. And Kellen, we're just very grateful to have you on the show today. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And sort of a bit to that story, I remember after that UCLA game, and I probably don't advise people to watch it, but it was something obviously on my side, on the negative side, and something that is even just on the emotional side. It's your first college game. And, fans also weren't too happy with the way the team and also me as an individual performed. But obviously the quarterback takes a large beating of that. I'm sitting in the locker room at UCLA, and I'm like, man, I'm never going to touch. Your mindset is I'm never going to touch the NFL. You think you're a good player coming in, and then you go to the Orange Bowl, your last college game ever. And I remember sitting in the locker room with some of the vets,
which was awesome.
And you're sort of just watching all of the young guys are up dancing, partying, and all this stuff in the locker room, and it's just you and the vets, and you're just sort of looking back like, man, I remember 4 years ago sitting at UCLA, and now you're an Orange Bowl winner, and you can just sort of reap the benefits. And it's sort of, I also know I'm about to go to the NFL. Jimbo knew it as well. And sort of just that sort of weight off your shoulder, like, look what I was able to accomplish. And I always tell a lot of people, and we sort of have this saying in the quarterback room, but it's never as good as it seems, and it's never as bad as it seems. And so there's so many times within the football world where you think you have a really good game, you look at your stat line, you go the next day, your coaches, and you watch the film, and you realize how much stuff you actually miss, and you're actually not as happy as what you were. And then on the other end, you sometimes maybe throw multiple interceptions, or you miss a bunch of throws in the game. You end up watching the film with your coach, and you actually realize it wasn't necessarily your fault. It was maybe your receiver doing something wrong, or offensive lineman, and you actually are a lot happy with your performance. So, I think it's sort of being able to weigh that roller coaster ride of emotion, and realizing that no matter what you're going through, it's usually never as bad, and it's usually never as good as what you think.
Really sage advice from Kellen Mond, and I think that's all we got time for. But Kellen, I think you've really characterized a testament to what it's like to have career reinvention, and best of luck to you. And we hope to have you on the show in a few years and talk about your journey through the art world. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Today we've been talking about career reinvention and pursuing passion and purpose. We had Kellen Mond here on the line talking about going from the transition of a college quarterback to NFL quarterback to now collaborating with Texas A&M and fine art, and running his own business doing fine art photography. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about making that change, pursue your passion and your purpose. We'll close with that. Have a great weekend, and God bless.